So I want to begin. Is Susie John here today? Okay, well, you can tell her I said this. I want to thank Susie Johns. This talk today was prompted by a conversation she and I had a few weeks ago. We were in the kitchen talking about how sometimes we only see a small part of the bigger picture. And why is that? And we got into this conversation, like you heard me have with the kids today, about how you can go to a concert or a dance recital or a wedding, and everybody's watching the event through this. And we said, how do you see the big picture if this is what you're doing? When you're watching a dance recital, if it's your child or grandchild, you're only focused on them. You're missing the big dance. If you focus on one player in the symphony, you're missing the entire symphony. And so we got into this discussion about why do we do that? Because we're viewing the big event through the small lens. And I understand we're trying to record our memories, and I get that, and I've done it too, but there's so much more to see beyond what is visible in that tiny lens. I want you to think of it like this, and I said a little bit of this to the kids. The opening or aperture determines the amount of light that comes in, and if we're not getting enough light, we move around until we do. We turn the flash on. We look at a different scene. We look where the sun is. But our spiritual aperture actually operates in the same exact way. It provides the light. It sheds light on our situations. It brings us to a bigger perspective. And sometimes it might just be a friend that gives you that light. Sometimes you may ask somebody, what is this about? And you get a word or a sentence and you feel like, oh, that shed light on a situation. Leslie and I had that this week together. We were shedding light on each other's situations this week, and it was very helpful to me because I was in the dark on some very serious matters, and I needed another perspective. But the idea is that as we heighten our awareness, so the more we are conscious of raising our awareness, the more light we're going to bring into the situation. But in order for that to help us, to have greater clarity, we have to make this intentional conscious shift and move from judgment of what we're going through to curiosity. Why is this happening? What can I do with this? What am I meant to learn? Rather than, this always happens to me. They did this to hurt me, and all the other things that come up for us in terms of judgment. But we have to be willing to look at ourselves as these explorers on this endless journey, looking for understanding and guidance at all times. Otherwise, we're trapped in our human consciousness, which honestly for me just makes it worse. Because I just want to go down the rabbit hole with all the thoughts that are going on in my mind. But as that spiritual aperture starts to widen, the depth of our vision also starts to become more meaningful to us. We learn to step back for a minute. Just step back. Take a breath. Don't do anything. Just step back and breathe. So we can understand what we're experiencing without and it just gets uglier and uglier and uglier. The deeper our vision, the more we dissolve that appearance of separation between us. It's an illusion we live with every day, that we're separate from others, that we're separate from our neighbor, we're separate from the person we're mad at, we're separate from the person who hurt us. We're not separate from anything. We are all connected. It's why we're able to have compassion for people we don't know. How many of you teared up when you found out all those children died in the flood this week? You didn't know them. Why did you feel bad? Because we're all connected. We're compassionate people, and we feel for one another. Of course, there were all these adults that died too in the flood, but most of us heard the kids. That's what we felt bad about. And none of us probably thought they were all together on a spiritual retreat when they left this earth together, which I find pretty powerful at the same time. We begin to see that importance of connecting in our shared purpose. But also the spiritual aperture helps us reframe the struggle we're having. Instead of it becoming a burden anymore, it starts to become the gift that teaches us. Each one of those challenges becomes a stepping stone for us to grow and to move forward. Think of it like this. Our physical lens captures the tangible. If we were at the beach, our physical lens sees the sunrise. It sees the trees. It sees the faces in the crowd. And it's capturing one thing at a time. But our spiritual aperture sees the beyond that physical. And it shows us how the sunrise is connected to the trees and the people, and it's all part of one beautiful scene. When we can do that, we're seeing in a way that allows us to embrace life fully, not just the parts that feel good. Unfortunately, we cannot only embrace the good in our day. We have to embrace it all if we're going to grow. It's the only way we can open our heart and stay attuned to what our human journey is meant to teach us. We won't spiritually evolve unless we do. And from this view of life, we're no longer bound by the shadows of our belief that we are limited by our circumstances, or limited by our physical ability, or limited by our consciousness. We have to learn to be still. We have to learn to listen with our hearts. We can't keep listening with our ears because they're only letting us hear part of what the situation is. It's also important that we start to look inward, where this light lives within us. But unfortunately, for most of us, challenges are distractions for our light. The more we're distracted by the outside challenges, the dimmer our light actually gets. So it's very hard to pick our faces up off the floor when we're having a bad time. It's that sense that we want to crawl back in bed and never get out. So it's critical for us to understand, if we're going to bring the light back, we have to raise our consciousness, open our heart, and open our mind to hear something different than what our judgment is teaching us. Looking inward helps us to rediscover our own light, which we all know already had all the answers for us. But we're too busy researching on Google for the answers. Why am I feeling this way? Okay, let's ask Google, who knows nothing about us. I've never understood that. This whole process requires so much trust and surrender. And I know that's hard for us to do during our worst nightmare experiences. I'm right there with you. I know how hard it is. Because the first thing we're asking ourselves is, how the heck could this be for my highest good? This does not add up. But it is for our highest good. As time passes, and we all know this, we're able to look back on these nightmare situations we've lived through and say, wow, I was pretty courageous to walk through that darkness. Wow, this is really amazing that I can look back and chuckle about this horrible thing I went through, or smile and say, good for me, I've done it. But the key to our success in this is understanding it's never a one-time lesson. So you better strap in. It is never a one-time lesson. It's a lifelong lesson, and sometimes repetitive experiences until we get them right. But the unbounded vision reminds us that we're not just observers of life, we're participants in the unfolding of us. So we're both. We're observing us and we're unfolding. Every thought, every word, every action is going to send a ripple effect into the universe. Now, for me, one of the best examples that has ever been visible to me is in our ability, understanding our capacity to expand our spiritual aperture in the most critical time, was a trial that occurred in 2019. And I love this story, not what happened in this story, but I love the teachings of this story. So many of you may remember there was a Dallas police officer, 30-year-old Amber Geiger, in 2019, who shot and killed a man, 26-year-old Botham Jean, by mistaking him for an intruder in her apartment. She had worked a long shift as a police officer that day. She was on duty. She got off and she drove to her apartment and she pulled in on the 4th floor and she walks to her apartment. The door is slightly open. She sees this guy on the couch. She fears for her life. She pulls out her gun. She shoots him in the chest. Now, he was a black man, and there were 64 black men killed that year. So you can imagine the amount of protesters outside and the social media hype on this case. The key to this story here, before I tell you the really cool part, is that she lived on the 3rd floor. She had pulled in to the wrong floor, went to the same exact door that her apartment would have been on, and she shot this innocent man. So his family, especially his brother, is in the courtroom. She took immediate responsibility. She was sentenced to 10 years in prison, and she was charged with manslaughter, not murder, because it wasn't, it wasn't intentional that she went after him. But right after the verdict was read, this man who passed, who was shot, his younger brother, Brant, says he wants to make his victim impact statement. And this is what he said to her. I love you as a person. I don't wish anything bad on you. If you are truly sorry, I know I can speak for myself. I forgive you. I think giving your life to Christ would be the best thing that my brother would want for you. He goes on to say he did not want her to face jail time. That's what he tells the judge. And then he pleaded with the judge to let him hug his brother's murderer. The whole room is crying at this point. If you've not ever seen this scene, you can go back and find these videos. But everyone is crying. And the judge walks over, and the judge says to Amber that she believes that she can make something of her life. And Amber says, "Do you really think my life can still have purpose after this?" And the judge says, "Of course I believe it can." And the judge leaves the courtroom, goes to her office, gets the Bible out of her room, comes back and gives it to this young woman and hugs her. Now, the entire scene shocked the world that year. And the video of all of this went viral. But what I want you to remember in this story is that if that brother had only been looking through the small lens, he would have wanted this woman to suffer the rest of her life and go to prison knowing she was hated. But he saw the bigger picture, that she parked on the wrong floor, that she was tired, that she was serving the community and just got distracted. And he forgave her, and he gave her peace in that moment. Through our spiritual aperture, we learn to understand our profound ability to heal, to transform, and to love. Let's review today's lessons. Seeing through our spiritual aperture requires us to shift our consciousness and widen our lens. Number 2, to embrace the unseen and use intuition and love. Number 3, to listen with our hearts and to expand our compassion. And number 4, to seek the light within, to let our faith transcend our fear. And the affirmation I wrote for today is, I see beyond the physical. Let's say that together. I see beyond the physical. And our quote, I love this quote. I had never seen it before. It's from someone named Paul Farini. And it says, "You see what you choose to see, because all of our perception is a choice. And when you cease to impose your meanings on what you see, your spiritual eyes will open, and you will see a world free of judgment and shining in its endless beauty." Let's take this in. So we pause for a moment to express our deepest gratitude for the light within, for the ability to have and choose the perspective we take in any situation, for the gift of our spiritual aperture to help us widen the scene, deepen the meaning, learn the lessons that were meant for us. And so we say thank you, God, for this gift, knowing that at any moment we can change what we see. And so it is. Amen.